faces that are new, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And do we need more seats back there? Are you good? Awesome. You got the last two? Hi, Frank. Welcome to MECA. I really appreciate you guys joining us. It's 2020, getting back into the evening with Oregon writers. We're doing this every single month. And Stephen reached out and asked if we would be interested in hosting the Easy Riders, which I love. And I always say riders, but of course it's writers. Writers, the Easy Writers. A couple of things that I just wanted to mention to you guys. Today is Robert Burns' birthday, so it's called Burns Day. And apparently, if we don't read something by Robert Burns, it will actually give us bad luck. And so Caroline will be doing that for us. Caroline is actually going to be filming tonight. She's got her show Literary. I also wanted to let you guys know that since all of you are interested in reading, writing, all of that good stuff, we actually are going to be having a writing workshop starting in March at MECA. It's going to be a 4-week writing workshop. And it's called Jumpstart, and it's to help jumpstart your writing. You can be at any level. There's no right or wrong level of attendance. And then I also wanted to mention that Mary has a book up here that's Never Go to Bed Hungry, and she's got that available. And then of course we carry Stephen, and it looks like we're going to be carrying Mike. Yep. And I don't know. I hope they all just want to, because we have a little library right here at MECA where we're selling, and it's only authors who have actually read here. So this is not, we don't just solicit anyone. It's people who have actually read at MECA. So that's why they're near and dear to us in our hearts. So anyway, thank you very much. I hope everyone got something to snack on, beer, wine, soda. And if anyone needs another chair, let us know, because it looks like we're running out. And actually, you know, if you sit up here in this section up here, you also can see, there's actually some nice comfortable chairs. You can actually see from that floor over there. So anyway, I will turn it over to our dear friend who said I could tell them that he's a troublemaker. Well, he said I could tell you all that he's a troublemaker, but he's really a darling. You all know that. Stephen Long. Thank you.
So I was obviously thinking about preparing for this, and I thought that there's a truism or a cliche that writing is a solitary endeavor, and of course it is. But that's not to be confused with something that's lonely, because all us writers get to hang out with some really interesting characters, and what we don't get to do so often is to share those characters with other people, and that's what we get to do tonight, so thank you for that. Holly mentioned that we are the Easy Writers, and so we're a critique group, and there's different kinds of critique groups. Sometimes people get together just to share their work, and I think when they do that, it's mostly to say they want affirmation. Look what I did, and I want you to tell me how good it is. Some writing groups are primarily about drinking wine. And nothing wrong with that. And Susan's sister is a writer, and in a writing group that is primarily aimed at promotion, so they help each other that way. This is a critique group. Easy Writers is a critique group, and we try to be better. We help each other identify weaknesses or suggest where a story might go or whatever it is. But you have to trust each other when you do that, because I have actually been in writing groups where somebody wants to be better by knocking somebody else down. And we certainly have criticism, but we trust each other that when somebody makes a suggestion, it's really to make the work better. It's all about the work, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that's who we are, and again, thank you for coming. I'm standing here, so I'm going to start. This is a short story that I wrote really as an exercise. It started as an exercise. And I had read a story that was in an omniscient point of view with a sardonic voice. And I thought that that was something I wanted to try. And it kind of went from an exercise to a lot of fun. So I hope that you enjoy this. The title is Love is Eternal for as Long as It Lasts, which is a line from Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I say in here with apologies to Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is the story of two people who they were certain loved one another unlike any couple who'd loved before. Indeed, our heroes, that is to say Rhonda and Michael, believed their pairing was simultaneously miraculous and inevitable. Miraculous because the world was so large, so populated, overpopulated, Michael pointed out. They could have easily missed one another. For example, what if she'd been born in Australia and he in Denmark? Or worse, they love to contemplate how much worse it could be. What if Rhonda lived on 10th Street and Michael on Euclid, so that they would have grown up in the same town but been assigned to different high schools? Holding each other, they shuddered at the thought. In addition to the complications of geography in the here and now, there was the matter of time to consider. This too was a favorite worry, much like the thrill of contemplating a horrible car crash. What if Rhonda was a Roman concubine and Michael a modern-day aeronautical engineer? Or Michael an 18th century French aristocrat and Rhonda a secretary in a 50s steno pool? The possibilities of such tragedy were nearly more than she could bear. And Michael too, of course. And yet when they thought about it, and they thought about it a lot, how could they not meet and fall in love? How could nature or fate or karma construe to keep apart two people so compatible, nay, so perfectly matched? Such a cosmic aberration would be proof of God's non-existence, for created as Rhonda and Michael were, one was incomplete without the other. Imagine a Holmes without a Watson, a Romeo without a Juliet. Impossible. Thankfully, the opposite was the case. Michael and Rhonda were together, and together offered an example of nature's rightness. A perfect rainbow, perhaps, or a cascading waterfall. But even those were inadequate comparisons. Rhonda suggested they were more like the rainbow fashioned from the mist of that cascading waterfall. At first she liked this new metaphor, but then modified it further, saying, no, wait, he was the powerfully pounding force and she the delicate vapor of his essence. Yes, that was better. And probably, again Rhonda's suggestion, there were bluebirds swooping just outside the frame, though she couldn't quite manage incorporating them into her allegory. Frame, Michael wondered? Allegory? And if further proof of their inexorable destiny was wanted, although she didn't require any, Rhonda assured Michael, one need only recall the exquisite pain each felt when they were apart. At least that's what she experienced, and Michael answered, well, sure, he missed her too. It was this ache Rhonda both relished and hoped to assuage as she dialed Michael from her dorm room. Hello, sweetheart, she breathed. Hey, I've got some news I think you'll like. I like it already, he said, a little breathy himself, a nuance that didn't go unnoticed. With exaggerated suspicion, Rhonda asked, what are you doing? Hoping her teasing would mask the fact that she really wanted to know. You sound, I don't know, busy? Just came in from a run, Michael said. 5 miles along the lake. Weather's great, I feel great. I'm going to shower, then grab a beer with the guys. There was a hesitation from Rhonda. Not much, just, you ran without me? Michael laughed. That's pretty much the only way I can since you aren't here. The phrase, how could you, stuck in her throat. All summer they'd run together, but Rhonda did not allow the words to escape because being in love, of being one half of a perfect couple meant allowing the other person to grow and experience things even if they couldn't be together. Well, she said, coming back to the reason for her call, my news is that I'm going to be home next week and I thought you'd want to be there. This was welcome, if somewhat confusing information. The school semester stood at midterm, and as far as Michael knew, she was doing well. Coming home must mean something had gone wrong. On top of that, her phrasing was odd. Of course he'd want to be there, and in fact was there. Where would he be if not home? Nevertheless, he wanted to be supportive, especially if she were in trouble. And he did miss her, so he said, cool. Rhonda laughed in her tinkling bells way. Cool? That's the best you can do? Michael may have been less than an orator, but he was not stupid. In an instant, he cut through the literal meaning of her words, spiced as they were with Rhonda's manufactured nonchalance, and produced, if not the perfect reply, then at least the understanding that much hung upon his answer. Way more than cool, fantastic. Having successfully parried, he advanced to an offensive position, one from which he'd never failed to score, so to speak. He lowered his voice, modulating to a pitch slightly above a guttural rumble, so that his words had a tremulous quality somewhere between a Scottish burr and a Spanish trill. I can't wait to get my hands in your hair, down your back, under your... No, silly, Rhonda interrupted, not home, just in the neighborhood. Actually, I'll only be at the airport. Mom sent me a ticket to see her new place in Reno, and I have a stopover at PDX. Michael recalculated faster than a high-end GPS. The airport was a 2-hour drive each way. If he made the trip, and certainly he would, because it had been 6 weeks since she'd left, and therefore 6 weeks and 1 day since they'd said goodbye. The visit would eat up a good chunk of his day. Nevertheless, this was Rhonda he was talking about, and perfection, he reminded himself, had its price. Okay, he said, as enthusiastically as possible. I'll grab some lunch at Biscuit Heaven. It'll be a picnic. We'll just hang until your flight leaves. Actually, he was thinking if he could get her out of the airport and into the car, they might do more than hang. But one step at a time, Michael, my boy. Don't forget, this was Rhonda the ideal he missed. All the rest, all the tussling, the sweaty nights and mornings and afternoons were only base expressions of the ethereal and pure love they both felt. If she only wanted to snuggle, snuggle they would. On the other hand, if her layover was long enough, they might get a room. You, Rhonda said, drawing out the word as if he tried to put over an obvious trick. What do you think you're going to do? Give the sack to a baggage handler? Have a flight attendant bring me the sandwich on the plane? Once again, Michael found himself behind the curve. Hang on, let me get this straight. You are coming to the airport, right? Uh-huh. And you want me there? Well, Rhonda answered, clearly hurt. I assumed you'd want to be. Michael knew this was tenuous ground, but it seemed the time had come for forthrightness. But you're saying I won't actually see you. Rhonda brightened a little. It's not impossible. I might have a window seat and you could be in a spot to see the plane. I could wear a red blouse or something so you'll know it's me. But I won't actually see you. I mean, we won't actually be together like holding hands or anything. Rhonda hoped Michael wasn't being intentionally obtuse, because that would just be cruel. Even more, she hoped he hadn't lost the notion that they were meant for each other, that their relationship was beyond special. It was one-of-a-kind perfect, never to be duplicated. She quickly checked her list of superlatives and comparisons. All seemed intact, if somewhat precarious. Michael, she said softly, knowing as he did, there was something dangerous in the air. Remember when you went camping with just the guys? Before you left, you told me to go outside exactly at 9 and look at the moon, because you'd be looking at the same moon at the same time, and so it would be like we were together? Michael did remember. It was a pleasant recollection, and he told her so. All right then, Rhonda said, relieved. This is the same thing. We can talk on our cell phones while I'm on the ground. You'll be in the parking lot not a quarter mile away, so we'll be practically together. Michael pictured himself not in the parking lot, but in the cell phone waiting area. The parking lot would cost $12, and he might not have a signal in the concrete structure anyway. After that, a 2-hour drive with another 2 hours ahead. He did love her, but for goodness sakes. You can't, he swallowed hard, be serious. 10 minutes ago, 10 seconds, she might have been cajoled, dissuaded. But his tone now, his presumption that she wasn't worth the effort, well, that was really too much. I have never been more serious, she said, seriously. Let me ask you something. Are we in love or not? Grateful for the ambiguity, he answered, well, sure. Which means we would do anything for one another. Pretty much, yeah. Rhonda pulled the phone from her ear, looked at the mechanism as if it were defective, and tried again. Pretty much? Pretty much isn't the right answer, my friend. Not by a long shot it isn't. Pretty much means no, not anything. Yes, she delivered this vehemently, and yes, she was truly stung. But even now, Rhonda believed she was practicing tough love, and in doing so, all would be rectified. Meaning, Michael would come to his senses. After all, when you came down to it, he was just a man, and therefore allowances would have to be made. Regrettably, it was at this moment Michael had a revelation. The sensation was a warm, bright light. It was the sun. It was clarity. Or maybe it wasn't any of those things, but it felt good and made him laugh. You've got to be freaking kidding me. This was not the response Rhonda had hoped for. It was not a response, in fact, she could deal with. Michael, I mean, come on, you want to talk? We can talk. I'd love to talk, but I can do that from here. I don't need to drive 85 miles, sit in my car, blah, blah, blah for 10 minutes, and drive 85 miles home. That's just dumb. Michael, his name, albeit shouted, was all she could manage. Her world, that bright and shining Camelot, the rainbows and the waterfalls, and yes, even the bluebird somewhere off screen, had in that moment evaporated, dried up, blown away. Rhonda would never again feel the same. Never again be certain she had given perfect love and been loved perfectly in return. She could hardly breathe. The air had been sucked from her room. She could not continue the conversation, and so carefully set the receiver in its cradle, causing the slightest click in Michael's ear. Ron, Michael said, sweetheart? But it was too late, and he knew it. He sat on the edge of his bed, arms tucked between his knees. Michael closed his eyes, picturing Rhonda's hair, root beer colored when the sun shone through. He recalled the smell of her skin, where her neck curved into her shoulder. He saw the freckles dusted like cinnamon across her nose and cheeks. These things he did his best to memorize, knowing that for him, they would exist only in memory. He sat until the room began to darken. Then he showered and shaved and dressed. Late in the evening, feeling strangely lighter, Michael drove to the pub to meet his friends. Young love. All right. So next up, David, and I wanted to say, I think there's a sort of a vetting process for our group. When David came to us, he was a good writer, but now he's a really good writer. He's been published in Perceptions magazine, collected in 2 anthologies, and is a Paper Gardens winner. So.
Hi, how are you folks? One of the problems that I have faced in writing is, I don't know if this occurs to other writers or not, but I am one of those folks that gets really excited about starting something, a brand new project, and I run off, and 3 or 4 chapters later, I run out of steam. And so I get really frustrated with all the characters that I invented and all the little stories that I wrote. And so this is my response. I call this Midnight Ambush. I've been typing for hours. My eyes and fingers hurt. Hell, my hair hurt. I closed my laptop and imagined sliding between my nice cool sheets. I clicked off my desk lamp and headed for the door. "You're heartless, you know that, Dave?" said a young woman, her arms extended like Frankenstein's monster, pawing her way across the room. A blue paper mask concealed the lower half of her face. One eye glowered at me, the other was covered by a black patch. I turned and smiled. "I love you too, Amy." "I doubt that," she said, easing into a chair. "You shot half my face off, then abandoned me. Now I'll never know who did it, or why." Her shoulders shuddered as she sobbed. "I used to be beautiful." "Not no more," commented a muscular teenager sitting across the room. Amy burst into tears. "Be nice, Juddy," I said. Juddy slouched into his chair, pulled a Leatherman from his green flannel shirt pocket, and began casually digging something out of his palm. "Why should I? You screwed us all over." Amy sniffled, blotted her eye on a blood-caked sleeve. "Excuse me. He didn't even get me to the hospital, and out of this bloody blouse." Another teenage boy entered and limped across the room. He sat in the chair next to Juddy and yanked down his pant leg, desperate to hide his prosthetic leg. Gideon glanced around. "I miss anything?" Juddy turned to his best friend. "Welcome to the party, Gid," he said, sucking blood from his wound. "We're just talking about the years Dave wasted trying to finish one of our stories." A woman in tight red dress sashayed into the room and eased into a chair. She crossed her legs and smiled at everyone. "Hello, boys and girls," she breathed. I nodded in her direction. "Nice to see you too, Betty." "Of course it is." She recrossed her legs. "He managed to finish my story." "And you've still got a face," added Amy. Gideon smiled. "And a nice pair of legs." The group turned and stared at me. "What?" I said, spreading my arms. "I'm having trouble with plotting." "You think?" Juddy said, crossing his arms across his chest. "You've changed it like 6 times in the last 3 years. Still don't have an ending." "I'm working on it." "What's going to happen to me?" Amy whimpered. "And me," Gideon chimed. "Give me a break, will you? I'm still learning. That's why I stopped to write these shorter stories, to learn." I looked at my watch. 12:30. I haven't stayed up this late in a decade. It's not as easy as it seemed. I turned towards the door. "I gotta go to bed." I reached for the wall switch, stopped, and turned back to look at them. The room was empty. And here's another one that I wrote. Kind of a take on divorce, American style. I call this one About the Kids. The guy walking down the sidewalk on Main Street wears a wide-brimmed black leather hat. A kaleidoscope of red and black tattoos flows over his biceps and under his black leather vest. He walks past the time and temp sign at the First Bank of Millville. 10:12 in the morning and already 89 degrees. He's got to be roasting in all that leather. Heavy traffic stirs a Sirocco 20 feet away. He ignores the push of air and noise and plants his black combat boots on the cement with purpose. Maybe he's on his way to his next drug deal or a little morning nookie with his girlfriend or boyfriend. Nothing unusual for this happening little bird, except for the rat. Riding shotgun on the back of the guy's neck, a white rodent bobs its head with the rhythm of its two-legged vehicle. The guy stops at the intersection, looks both ways, and crosses. The rat turns its head and sniffs the air. Millville survived Elvis, streaking, spike-purple hair, and once senile old Harold Ferber showed up at the VFW parade wearing only his boxers. But a white rat as a fashion accessory? Nice folks around here lock their oddest behavior away like crazy relatives. Some people carry around those yippy little designer dogs like handbags. Maybe pet rats are the next wave of American fadness. Rats don't yap, they don't need a leash, and so far, Millville doesn't require a rat license. Rat owners would then have to have their flea-infested rodents inoculated and hang tiny bubonic plague tags on their little rat collars. The man steps off the curb at the next block and keeps on trucking. The shadow from his hat moves across his back, and the rat climbs deeper into the shade of the brim. The guy leaves the cement and heads for a wooden bench under the last of the old elms in Veterans Park. He keeps his back straight so the rat won't fall off and sits. He reaches his arm behind his neck. The rat climbs onto the back of his outstretched hand, and the man lowers it to his thigh. The man pulls a package wrapped in yellow paper from inside his vest. The rodent stands up on its hind legs. His tiny wire whiskers twitch in the hot morning air. Leather guy unfolds the paper, breaks off a hunk of the Big Mac, and holds it out. Rattus domesticus stretches his neck and nibbles on the grease burger. All that trans fat could jack up the rodent's cholesterol. It could have a heart attack, then a quadruple bypass, followed by cardiac rehab. But hey, it'd get a great workout on that squeaky wheel. It'd be a natural. The guy breaks off a hunk of bun and feeds it to the rat. By now, a crowd of gray park squirrels is hopping and dancing around the wooden bench like breakdancers. They've caught the intoxicating scent of McDonald's. One brave squirrel jumps on the far end of the bench. Its bushy tail snaps upward, punctuating its demanding chatter. The man cracks a smile and mutters, "None for you guys." Another squirrel joins its buddy on the end of the bench, then a third, then a fourth. Another scrambles up the backrest and sits on the top rail, chattering at the food as if to say, "The Big Mac of your life." On the other side of the park, a white Mercedes pulls up to the curb. An expensive-looking woman emerges. She reaches into the car, retrieves her shoulder bag, and slams the door. She pauses, touches her hair, then steps around the front of the car. Her white top and pants ebb and flow over her swaying body like ocean waves. Nothing's going to stick to her today, even if it is 89. "I assume you brought the paper," she says as she approaches the park bench from behind. The squirrels dive off their perches and huddle near the base of the elm tree. "That's why we're here, isn't it?" Leather guy says and feeds another chunk of Big Mac to the rat. The woman pulls out a paper towel from her bag, dusts off the farthest end of the bench, and sits. She slips her arm into her bag, takes out a black rat, and places it on her knee. The rodent ignores her and turns towards the leather man, nose arching into the air, sniffing. The woman breaks out a Ziploc filled with tiny chunks of veggies. She picks out a carrot and holds it up to the black rat's mouth. It stares at its white counterpart for a few seconds more, then finally turns and snatches the morsel out of her fingers. "Did you sign them?" she says. The guy shoves his hand into his other pocket of his leather vest and takes out a bundle of rolled papers. "I came, didn't I?" The woman feeds a piece of celery to her rat and then glances at her gold wristwatch. "I've got a pedicure with Raoul in 10 minutes. The man rolls his eyes and tosses the bundle of papers sideways. Her body stiffens when they bounce off her hip and land on the bench. "Are we going to fight over custody?" She unfolds the papers, scans the documents, and shoves them into her bag. "Mickey and Minnie belong together, and you know it." She glances at the white rat perched on the man's thigh. It's staring back at her black rat with longing. "Of course they do." The man focuses on the brave squirrel at his feet, eyeing his boots. "I'm going to be late for Raoul," she says, and picks up the Ziploc. Mickey takes another morsel of Big Mac. "You've grown mean and spiteful." The woman places the Ziploc back in her bag, puts it into a landing pad at the bottom, and places Minnie on top. She glares at the man in black and says, "At least I've grown up. You never did." When she stands, the squirrels scamper away, then turn back to glare at her. A slight smile spreads across her mouth. "See you in court," she hisses, then turns on her heel and walks away. Leather guy coaxes his rat onto his hand. "No matter what I do, she's going to outspend me. I'm sure going to miss you, Mickey."
Truth in advertising. The posters for this event had Andy Walker, and Andy's in our group and couldn't make it. Mona Lohner is our newest member, and I said that there was kind of a vetting process for this. When she read her work the first night, and we didn't even make her go away and come back. So everybody said, "Yep, she's in." So, Mona.
Yeah, I call this little short story A Bumpy Start. Allison rode Toby into the show ring at a prancing walk certain that the old Palomino pony would settle down and take good care of her. Instead, Golden Toby tossed his shampooed white mane, showing off for the locals, settling onto the dusty bleachers. Allie pressed her seat down, signaling him to go slower. He responded by flattening his ears and yanking on the reins. His rider's confident smile vanished. The announcer's voice sang out, "Trot!" Aged, totally broke Toby took 2 strides of trot and lifted himself into little bucking leaps, bouncing 7-year-old Allison forward. She lost her stirrups, but kept hold of the reins and threw her arms around his neck. His bucking stopped immediately, and he proceeded into a sweet pony trot. The plucky little girl balanced herself securely on Toby's neck, but no sooner would she slide back down to plop into her saddle than he would buck again. With Allie riding up on his neck, Toby trotted obediently along, yet every time she sat in the saddle at the trot, he bucked. The announcer called out, "Walk," and Toby transformed into a gentleman, allowing his rider to sit quietly in the saddle for an entire round. When the judge had the 5 children finish, line up, back a few steps, then come forward into line again, Toby politely tucked his nose and backed up 4 perfectly straight steps. Placings were then called out and ribbons presented. Out of 5, Allison and Toby received 4th. 1 pony had refused to trot at all. The judge gave Allie a smile, and she got a burst of applause and a thunder of stomping from the wooden bleachers. She hadn't fallen off. Allison's mother greeted them as they left the arena. "Great job to stay on, sweetheart. What in the world got into Toby?" She made a grab for the bridle, then let go at her daughter's frown. "Something's up with Toby," said Allison. "This is your first show, honey. You're nervous, and he's just picking up on it, that's all." "I am not nervous. I think he's upset about something." "Toby knows better than to show it in the ring. We exercised him this morning, and I've been bringing you 2 down to practice in the arena every day for a week." "Mom," said Allison in a hushed voice, "you always tell me not to blame my horse." Allie made a show of petting and crooning to Toby as they passed other riders on their carefully groomed horses, with attentive parents carrying polishing rags and ribbons. Metal horseshoes clicked against the asphalt of the parking lot, and quieter clicks came steadily from cameras. Novice green horses coming out of their classes whinnied to their barn mates waiting at the horse trailers. Toby walked placidly between the girl and her mother. "He seems fine now," said Allison as they reached their own trailer and gave Toby his water bucket. "You don't have to go in the next class," offered Allie's mom. "You won't have a saddle to hold on to in a bareback class." Allison rolled her eyes at her mother. "Yeah, like a saddle will help." Toby coughed over a too quick gulp of water and let loose a very noisy fart. A couple of boys passing by burst into laughter. Allison and her mom fell into a fit of giggles. Okay, let's get you 2 ready." From across the parking lot came the megaphone echo of the announcer calling for the riders in the beginner's bareback class. "Uh-oh," said Allison. "Gotta go. Off with his saddle." She gave a tug to unbuckle the girth, and Toby swerved round, tossing the little English saddle and fleece blanket to the ground. "Let's get you on. I'll get the saddle," said her mom. She gave her daughter a quick leg up and smacked Toby on the rump. The pony promptly broke into a gallop toward the arena, with Allison's mom set to take off on a rescue. But Toby didn't buck once and slowed back down at his rider's signal to walk quietly into the arena. Allison stuck on like a burr. "Ouch!" Allison's mother turned over the saddle she'd just picked up. Stuck into the middle of the fleece blanket was a cluster of burdock burrs. They bore a striking resemblance to the ones they combed out of Toby's tail in the morning and had so carefully put aside.
I thought she might say, and she didn't, so I'm going to say, writers are told to write what you know. This is something she knows, right? And how many years? 41 years as a trainer and a writing coach. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different. Mary, you want to introduce this and then?
Hi, I write for 3 reasons. I enjoy a challenge, it's fun, and it doesn't cost much. The best kind of love. When Phyllis and Frank Grimley experienced the wrenching trauma induced by the stillborn birth of their baby and were told they would never become parents, their lives were changed forever. Their carefree lifestyle lost its edge and became one of mutual dependence. As the years passed and their love for each other deepened and matured, they felt less impulse to declare it. They learned to bicker without rancor, quietly enjoy every moment they shared. Sort of.
Okay? So this is from Mary's book. They're going to read from Mary's book. This is dialogue, and so we thought it would be maybe best to present it as dialogue. You know, I wanted to say something about Mary too. I mentioned Easy Riders, and I was going to preface that by telling you that that group was started in '91, and Mary, I think you were 16. But anyway, we've had a ton of people go through there, joining and moving away. But Mary not only writes, she's a painter, and a couple of years ago challenged herself to...
Actually, 5 years ago.
Oh, time flies. She challenged herself to do a painting a day, and she did it, if you can imagine that. And some of those hang at the Addison. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, quite accomplished. So Mary started, or was instrumental in starting Easy Riders, but also you were a founding member of Arts Alliance.
Right.
So quite a deal. So we're going to have Susan read part and David read part, and here you go.
So this is Phyllis and Frank. Forget I asked. Frank, do you think my nose is getting longer? Phyllis peered into the hand mirror she held at arm's length.
Frank rolled his eyes and braced himself. Is your nose getting longer? I don't know, Pinocchio. Have you been telling lies?
I'm serious. I read about it in the doctor's waiting room. Did you know that our noses never stop growing and nobody has figured out how to make them stop? So I need to know, is mine getting longer? Now don't look at me like that, just tell me.
Why? If it's inevitable, why torture yourself? Frank lowered the paper he was trying to read and leaned back in his chair. I'd say that except for the gray hair and a little extra weight, you haven't changed a bit. He barely suppressed a smile.
What are you talking about? Are you calling me fat? I am not fat. I weigh no more than I did when we got married. I may wear a size or two larger, but the sales clerk at Penny explained that. She said clothing sizes have been changed. Why, she didn't know. Phyllis drummed her fingers. And of course my hair is graying. I'm married to you, aren't I?
You haven't gained any weight since our wedding.
And what's that supposed to mean?
Oh, let's not fight.
Then don't provoke me.
Okay, consider yourself unprovoked. Now, may I finish my paper?
Well, who's stopping you?
They sat quietly for a few minutes, Frank hoping to read, Phyllis trying to measure her nose.
All I want is a simple answer. Is my nose getting longer?
Frank leaned back, took a skipping, hot over coals breath. His paper dropped to the floor, but he didn't speak.
Well,
Well, what?
is my nose getting longer?
You're not going to give up, are you? All right, I'll give you an honest answer. I don't know. I really don't know. Satisfied?
No.
Okay, then try sticking it into other people's business. See if that's getting any easier.
Now you're being mean. I only asked because yours is.
Phyllis, my what is what?
Your nose is getting longer.
Well, not,
Well, not so much longer as it's kind of rounder. Rounder on the end, just the end.
curious now. Frank figured his nose. No, it isn't.
All right, have it your way. You getting hungry?
Need you ask?
Phyllis reached for his hand. Come on, I fixed your favorite stew for lunch.
Frank lifted the end of his nose with his finger. I know, he muttered. We can smell it.
This little book is a whole collection of those short stories of Phyllis and Frank, and Mary has some copies for sale if you're interested.
I don't know if I should tell you how this book came about, but naturally I'm going to. We've been encouraging Mary for a long time, a couple of years maybe, I don't know, to collect these stories and present them in a little book, and she never would. Mary is not, I'm not going to say technologically challenged, but sometimes asks for help with her computer. So one of our members who isn't here this evening.
Yeah, we'll blame her.
Yeah, and that's why we always leave one person out, and then we can blame them for everything. No, but we had this all planned, and so on the next time that Mary needed help with her computer, our friend got into it, gathered the Phyllis and Frank stories and emailed them to herself, and then we worked through and produced this book, and it was a gift.
Nice.
For my birthday.
The fact that her banking information got stuck in there. So, a little bit of a change. Caroline, you want to read for us?
Oh, yeah.
And this is, tell me again, it's Robert Bird's birthday?
Yeah.
He couldn't make it. So Caroline's going to read us a little bit.
It's right there. You have it?
We have Robert Burns' cake.
I don't really sure. You
And it's
print them
fresh?
out. You got them?
So Caroline, I know that this is new to you. Be sure to put this.
Yeah, I signed the release authorization
Yeah.
also too. just to
Make
make
sure
sure.
she did that, you know.
So I do a show at our local TV station here, and Caroline is the producer, and it wouldn't go anywhere without her.
I had the pleasure last Saturday to be at the Falls Event Lodge for the Celtic Heritage Alliance Burns Supper. So everybody brought some work by Burns. A man's a man for all that. Is there an honest poverty that hangs his head and all that? The coward slave we pass him by, we dare be poor for all that. For all that and all that, our toils obscure and all that, the rank is but the guinea's stamp, the man's the man for all that. What though on hamely fare we dine wear hodden grey and that, ye feels their silks and knaves their wine, a man's a man for all that. For all that and all that, their tinsel show and all that, the honest man, though e'er so poor, is king of men for all that. You see yon Berkey cad a lord with struts and stairs and all that, though hundreds worship at his word, he's but a cool for all that. For all that and all that, his ribbon star and all that, the man of independent mind, he looks and laughs at all that.
Okay, so one quick announcement. Mike Paul, you have a new book coming out?
I do,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a children's book, so anybody with children will like this book. And it's
Or anybody who was a child?
Right, anyone
Which is
who was a child, yes.
lot of us.
I like to think that even adults would like this. Anyway, it'll be out pretty soon. I had to do a couple editing changes, but I've got some copies available. We're gonna have some in here. Hey, Charles. We'll have some in here after Wednesday, so if anybody's interested, and if you wanted me to read one little smidge of it.
Do it.
You can read something,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, look at here, I'll tell you what, let me just do this. I could show the pictures too, just like pretend you're in bed tonight, okay? And I'm reading you a story to go to sleep.
Can I ask you the age of the children that it's meant for?
Anywhere from probably 5 or 3 till 18 or 25.
Right now, I
I'm like a kid myself. So.
So, you know, I'm way up there.
Okay, so this is, I don't have page numbers on it, but this is in the beginning of the book. So when it came time to build a highway through the valley, his little farm sat right in the way. Short wouldn't sell the land to the state because what would he do to make a living? He didn't know anything except raising pigs. So they had to build the divided highway around the farm. One lane on either side. Nothing could be done. People needed that road to get from here to there and back. Farmer Fast would just have to carry on and make do. There are quite a few pigs on his farm. His swine are known throughout the valley to provide the tastiest pork you can get. Before the highway was built, he always walked the team of hogs to the market. Short realized he had a sizable problem. How could he get across that busy highway with his herd? Well, now you'll have to buy the book. That's it. Thank you. So I really enjoyed everyone's reading, and I have to go because I have a dinner.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but I gotta leave, but thank you, everybody.
Read and run.
Yeah, read and run. You know me, huh?
Can I just make a quick? I
Well,
forgot
sure,
something.
place.
I totally forgot. I'm actually giving away, oh, no, wrong time. I'm actually giving away 2 free tickets to the McMinnville Short Film Festival. So Aaron and I will go around and quietly give everyone a ticket, and I guess that's how we'll do it. Yeah, we'll do a raffle. Yeah, I have 2 tickets for the Short Film Festival for the opening night at Lakefield College at the Ice Auditorium, so, and the reception afterwards. So, anyway, did I mention that?
All right. Okay, folks, now, this is kind of dessert, kind of saving the best till last. This whole thing started with Susan. We were in class, and we've heard for quite some time chapters of her science fiction novel and changes and so on. And I think she's getting ready to publish. So this whole night really came about because I want to show off. So, Susan, suck it to us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all again for coming tonight. This has been very exciting for us. Steve's a little optimistic about when my book might come out, but he mentioned it's science fiction. I prefer science fantasy because I'm not a scientist, but you don't have to know any more about it than that because we're starting on page 1. Book 1, Chosen. 1. Remember, Grandfather said as he adjusted the heavy glove on Rune's skinny wrist. Hold your arm straight, your hand to the side. Yes, child, like that. With his teeth, Grandfather cinched the goat's hide thong that bound the glove tighter. His blue eyes gazed into Rune's dark ones. When the bird comes in, it'll come fast. You need to be steady. It's a young one, but it'll grow, like you. Grandfather gave Rune a friendly cuff on the back of the head. Rune turned to grin at Mother, who grinned widely back. For an instant, his gaze took in the sky, dull blue clouded with a thin gray and pierced here and there by the sharp, dark points of needle trees. The little Nea was out there, waiting to be called by him. Excitement turned in his stomach like some big thing he'd swallowed. And then the back of his neck began to prickle, almost as if he were about to get a sending. But there were no protocols, as the mind speaker Merveille called them, no further sensory tingles. But something made him look to the edge of the forest, where a dark-haired girl stood watching. Rune squinted, but he didn't recognize her. She must be chilly, he thought, dressed as she was in only a white gown. And then Grandfather said, "Go ahead, child. When you're ready, call." Rune forgot the girl, and tipping back his head, wet his lips and shouted the Nea's name into the gray sky. "Fair, Aeho," and whistled. A black dot at the edge of sight grew suddenly bigger, rushing for his face. At the last moment, Rune closed his eyes, but that was all the flinching he did. The Nea hit his arm like a rock that stopped falling just before it struck. Its talons squeezed his bones as the small bird wobbled on his arm. Rune opened his eyes to see the Nea's beak tearing at the bit of goat meat pinched between his fingers. His grin nearly split his face. Grandfather laughed. A fine job. Aerith. Grandfather had invited Aerith, who was great house engineer, to help with the birds. He came up with Fair's hood, his arm gloved like Rune's, and his beard tucked into a bulky muffler, another bit of meat in his hand. The little Nea hopped to Aerith's glove, and Rune, still beaming, pulled at the bindings on his arm. Instead of loosening, the knot tightened, and he turned to Grandfather for help. But the old historian Lunar came up, walking through the grass. Lunar had papers in his hand. "Te Anrus," he called to Grandfather, "these must be signed." The two old men moved off a ways across the grass, and it was Aerith who helped Rune off with the glove. Mother's hand squeezed Rune's shoulders. That was wonderful. Her smile was giddy. Beside her, Aerith winked. "You're a natural, lad." Grandfather said I need to learn how to keep Fair clean and fed, and I can fly him again tomorrow. Grandfather was walking with Lunar toward the cart the historian must have hovered out in. Rune waved. "Goodbye, Grandfather, thank you." Grandfather turned and smiled, hands held high in the sign of the one, and grunted, and bent, and fell. Rune broke away from Mother and ran. Lunar fell to his knees in the grass beside Grandfather, papers flying from his hands. One of the guards who'd come with him also running now, also kneeling. The other guard, the mine talker, the only one standing still. Rune pushed between the kneeling men. What's wrong with him? Mother was suddenly beside him, crawling in the grass to Grandfather's side. She looked at Lunar, at the guard. "Amrilla Doma is coming," the mine talker said quietly, the house medic. "But what's wrong?" One of the guards took Rune's arm. "Come with me, boy." He didn't pull, though, when Rune refused to go. Grandfather groaned and rolled over in the grass, and Mother took his hand. He opened an eye. "Eleanor?" Closed the eye. "Amrilla's coming," Mother said. "Just rest." "No. Must choose. I never chose." He struggled, gripping Mother's hand till he got himself up onto an elbow. "Where's the boy? Where's Rune?" "Here, Grandfather." Rune shook loose from the guard's grip and went down on his hands and knees beside Mother in the grass. The wind had picked up, blowing Mother's hair into his face. Grandfather scrabbled for Rune's arm, closed on it like a vice. His voice was rough. "It's you. Do you understand? Tell her I choose you." Mother rose like a spring. "Father, this is wrong. He's a child." Her gaze slid from Rune to Grandfather and back to Rune. "Don't do this." Do what, Rune thought. Tell who? Another cart hovered up, Amrilla leaping out before it had even fully settled into the grass, her medic's bag clasped to her side. "Please," she cried, "all of you, give us room." The guards made way for her, and Mother said, "Rune, go, now." She pushed him. He stepped back while Amrilla called out orders, and the guards lifted Grandfather into the medic's cart and covered him with a blanket. Lunar was helped to his feet. The guards who'd come with him rounded up the papers, and then their cart also hovered away. The wind grew fiercer, coiling down the collar of Rune's vest. Amrilla, the historian, the guards, even Mother, had vanished. But he wasn't alone. The girl he didn't know still stood at the edge of the forest. Her gaze followed the carts as they hovered across the grass toward the great house, and then she turned and looked at Rune. A single word popped into his head. "Lad!" Aerith hobbled up, the false leg catching in the tall grass. His cheeks were wet. This day had to come, but one help, it's too soon. He gathered Rune in, pressed against the thick wool of his vest. "Your mother has gone with her father and Amrilla. You can ride in the bird cart with me." Rune looked over his shoulder as he walked with Aerith to the cart. "What about—" But the woman was no longer there. Rune shivered. "Chosen," she'd said. She'd sounded pleased. 2. Rune knelt on the sofa in Antande's room, not caring if he mussed the cushions with his boots. He hadn't seen Mother or Father in the 5 days since the burial, and he was bored. The burial had been interesting, the music and the tree planting and Father making a speech, but also long. So many people from across the world wanting to stop and talk. poets and the Ornean Tay and even the Duane of Thwale and Dracocan. He hadn't realized how big the Drac were or how smelly. And he had to stand there beside Father and speak when spoken to without looking too tired or too sad or bored. Needless to say, there'd been no days flying fair or visits to Grandfather's study to see the antique sword, the fossil anteater, the stone balls from Island Curious. They'd be donated to a museum, so Antende said. That study would be Father's now. Rune flopped down onto the sofa and picked up the toy hover he'd hidden between the cushions. He wished Antende would come back with the snacks. Antende was grieving. She'd known Grandfather since she was Rune's age. Rune knew he should be grieving too, but grieving hurt too much. Thinking about how little attention anyone was paying to him was easier. Trying to make Antende smile easier still. He just had to ask for stories, and she told him. Grandfather catching creek lizards with a homemade net. Grandfather sent away so his uncle's enemies couldn't hurt him. Grandfather defeating those enemies with War Eeld's help. Thinking about War Eeld was easiest of all, though it was impossible to know what was real and what pretend. Antende swore that all the tales were true. She'd met the hero, cleaned his tent and cooked his breakfast and listened when he counseled Grandfather and his guard ones. Not only strong and handsome, she said, but wise. He was the reason Grandfather won that war, the reason people all over Hotlianea rallied to Grandfather's side against the usurper Jonan. Maybe desert dragons were a kind of lie. Maybe the Stealer was a boogeyman Antende made up to frighten him when he was naughty, but War Eeld was real. Rune wished his mother would come. He wanted to ask her about Grandfather and why a skinny, naked puda tree and not a sturdy moorhead or a red bancha had been planted in the woods to honor him. Skinny, naked puda sounded like something he shouldn't say, so he said the words aloud, and just as he said them, the door opened and his mother walked in. Do not be worrying, Eleanor. The child and I are fine. That was Antende coming in with Mother, who was carrying a tray. Rune could see that there were orange slices and iced rich breads to go with juice and coffee in mugs. Antende drew the curtain to hide her bed while Mother set the tray on the table. Rune was already on his feet, the toy hover back between the cushions. Mother, he said, I miss you. She smiled. It's a strange time. We must all get used to everything being different. She sat in one of Antende's red chairs, and Rune stood beside her, leaning on the upholstered arm. She squeezed his hand. You understand that now your grandfather is dead, your father is the Tay? He nodded. And you are the Tay-Ah, and I am the Sute, and Uncle is heir. He picked at the lace that decorated the chair's arm. What's a Sute? Well, Tay means one, and Sute is little one, and Tay-Ah is the Tay's companion. She ruffled his hair. He ducked away from her hand. Little one? I'm 9, almost, and I'm Rune of Hotlianea. Mother laughed. Well, I was Sute when your grandfather was Tay, and if you are strong and diligent in your studies, you might be heir one day. She cupped his chin in her hand. He pulled away and remembered his questions. What happens to Grandfather now? Remember Mule, the poet who lived in the desert? When Rune nodded, she said, This is what he says. I am the dust winking in the sun. I go where power wills me, ever free, and always, always with you. Mine is choice forever. Now I choose to go and to return. Her voice was warm and soft, and when she finished, she kissed Rune on the top of his head. Mule believed in desert dragons, he said, and she nodded. Then I will choose what he chose. In his mind, he saw the dragons, great-toothed beasts with green hides and soft bellies like small hills that might or might not have existed. What did Grandfather choose me for? Ah, she said, I thought you would remember that. She fell silent, and when he glanced at her, her face was turned sideways and she had a distant look, as if she saw through walls. Merve looked like that when mind speakers talked inside her head, but Mother wasn't a talker or a listener like Rune was. Antende, Mother said abruptly, please, I need to speak to Rune alone. Do you mind taking your coffee in the gallery? I won't be long. I'll do that, Doma. I could use a bit of quiet. Rune, lad, mind yourself. When the door had closed behind her, Mother took Rune's chin in her hand again and looked into his eyes long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then she let him go. Your grandfather left you something. She reached into her pocket. He reached too, but she gripped his hand, her voice becoming high and faint, as if her throat could barely squeeze the sound out. I do this for him because I trust him. And for reasons I will never understand, he trusted me. Now you must keep that trust. She pulled her hand from the pocket. What she held was a small box, a wooden cube painted a lavender so sheer the box seemed made of air. When she set the box in Rune's hand, it filled his palm like magic. He knew this box. Before Grandfather died, it held the Tay's ring. Now that ring was Father's. This is mine, he asked. Can I open it? Just the box, she answered. And he opened the lid, pressing just so against the clasp the way Grandfather had shown him. A different ring nestled inside, a broad band of silver, intricately worked, with a dull red stone on top. Grandfather kept secret things in the tiny space beneath the red stone. His secret ring? He's giving it to me? Rune turned the ring over and over in his hands. Her hands touched his, stopping their movement. She took the ring, put it back into the wooden box, and placed the box on the table. Rune's smile faded. She looked so tired. Mother? She pushed away his outstretched arm. My father has given a large obligation to a child. You have to keep this ring safe, somewhere you can always find it. But you can't play with it, and you can't open it. She paused, and her voice grew stronger. Do you understand? Open the ring only in a crisis, not before. You're old enough to remember that. She moved to the window and leaned against the sill. He sprawled on the sofa and fiddled with the hover, waiting for her to speak again. He wondered why she wasn't Tay. She, not Father, was Grandfather's child. But child by family only, not by blood. He, Rune, was Father's child by blood. Would he be Tay someday? If Mother was right and he studied hard and became heir, he might. But Father could name someone heir that Rune didn't know, who might not let him stay here in this house. That thought had not occurred to him before, that he might not always be able to live in the great house. He put that thought aside. Mother didn't turn, and he picked up the box again. He wondered what his father's ring box was like. Aerith would make it. Aerith was good with his hands and always had oranges or chocolate in his workshop. He walked funny because of the false leg, and his beard looked like a thornbird nest, but he was never too busy to show Rune his tools or to let him hold the soldering gun. Aerith would make an orange box for Father, Rune decided, to match Father's beard. The box would have a large, bright clasp. He could barely see the clasp on the lavender box. Rune found it and popped it with his thumbnail, and the ring dropped into his palm. You couldn't see the catch on the ring at all. You had to know that it was there. Rune knew where it was. He pressed it. His mother slapped his hand so hard he cried out, the ring tumbling away onto the rug. She snatched it up before he could grab it and snapped the secret space shut and set the ring on the table beside the box. And then she smashed the box with her palm. When the crisis comes, she hissed, her voice low, I just told you, don't open the ring until the crisis. He made the mistake of looking at her face. She left him before his hand stopped stinging. Through his tears, he scooped up the ring and the broken bits of box and cradled them in his hands. No use asking her what a crisis was. No use asking what Grandfather chose him for. Probably she was jealous. Probably she wanted to be chosen. Thank you.
I was going to say, if you had a question, we would do our best, and otherwise...
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Sorry. Good, so let's do questions.
Anybody? All right then, let's eat.
All right, so I want to make sure everybody gets a ticket at the front. So February 21st through the 23rd, we are doing the McMinnville Short Film Festival. There's wonderful attendance. There's 9 different blocks of filmings, blocks of shows that are going to be done. I'm actually going to be hosting the Native American one. I'm very excited about that. So this is going to be wonderful. I really encourage you. There's a flyer at the front door, the back door, the door to the parking lot. I don't know which one it is. But anyway, that door. There's a flyer back there, and make sure you get a ticket. Come on up to Erin and get half a ticket, and we'll do a drawing in about, I don't know what time it is. We'll do a drawing about, it's 7:15. Let's do a drawing at 7:45. All right?
All right. What's the drawing for?
2 free tickets. I thought I said that. Oh, sorry. I meant to say that. 2 tickets to the opening show and the opening reception.
And before we disperse, let's give a hand to Holly.
Thank you, guys. Oh, you don't have to film this, do you?
Make sure she's honest.
That's right. Make sure I'm honest. That's right. I like that. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you know we're going to do the drawing in a moment. And I also want to let you know that I have started directing and hosting a TV show on MCM 11. And Mike Santenay is my producer, my mentor. He has been such an amazing inspiration and help with me. We've done 2 shows so far. I haven't been very good about promoting it yet, but it's already been on MCM. And I'm still a little shy, even though I've done the film anyway. Done it anyway. Our first one was with Cameron Nye. The second interview that we did was with Chris Horn, the president of the Art Alliance of Yamhill County. So I just want to let you guys know about it. It's called Arts Essential. The key goal behind the show is to talk to people who are helping to make art available, helping to make art accessible, helping to use art to heal. And that's what this is all about. And so Arts Essential is going to have a goal. And I'm still looking for interviewers and interviewees and all of that kind of stuff. And I've never done anything like this before. So, total novice. But I'm taking a chance. And so I will get it posted out on our Facebook page. If you haven't seen it already, if you haven't been to the Facebook page, it will be out there in the next few days, posted on YouTube. Anyway, now, the reason why we're here, because everybody's really excited, and I know there's a bunch of you that really want a ticket right now. And there's actually 2 in this envelope. So, Mary, would you do the honors? Drum roll, please. All right, 399033. Oh no! That was so totally not planned. We've got it on film. It was not planned. There is no. Are you serious? Well, it's magic.
I drew my own.
Okay, seriously, there is no way that could have been rigged, and it's on film for playback. I'm just letting you know.
Holly?
Yes.
She has an X-ray contacts.
Oh, that's what it is, X-ray contacts. Awesome. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Keep watching Facebook or mecaor.com for more events. Thanks.